How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? It's Lor-Online here again today with another video, and today we are going to be talking about new events that could be added to Star Wars The Old Republic sometime this year, and also covering already existing events in the game, such as the Rakghoul Plague event or the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association, and we're going to be talking about how they could perhaps be improved. So anyway guys, as always, sit back and prepare yourself for some serious Star Wars content. Alright guys, so very quickly before we start, I'd like to go over a quick introduction that I've set up. Basically, I want to talk a little bit about the Dark vs. Light event. For those of you who don't know, the Dark vs. Light event involved players going and creating new characters, and as a reward they receive armor sets that will give them more XP for their next characters, so people could basically create their characters faster, level them up faster, and overall get through the original Star Wars The Old Republic content as fast as possible. Now, I like the concept in general, but I wouldn't actually call it an event. I think it's more of a promotional offer or limited time offer for the player base, and honestly I wouldn't necessarily consider it to be on par with other events such as the Rakghoul Plague or the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association. It's a bit odd that the devs are considering the Dark vs. Light event to be its own distinctive event that is on par with other events in the game. Personally, I feel the Dark vs. Light event should just be a one-time or promotional offer, and they shouldn't see it to be more than that. The events that they bring out each year should be much more distinctive. They should have a campaign of some description alongside a daily zone or some form of interactive area. On top of that, they need to allocate a specific time frame within the year, whether it's a week of a month or if it's a month of a year. That should be allocated purely towards that event, and that event should only be available during a certain time frame, which encourages people to subscribe during that time period and also encourages people to get the event done and stay active while that event is alive. So it keeps the player base sort of steady. That's kind of my idea behind an event. It shouldn't be something that's 6 months long and is all about grinding characters. Anyway, that's enough of that. That's sort of the only negative point I'm going to focus in on this video, because ultimately I feel that events as they stand at the moment in Star Wars The Old Republic are actually modest. I like the fact that we have a fair selection of events, and I really like the fact that Star Wars The Old Republic doesn't follow the traditional norm for events in MMOs. Like, we don't have an event in December, and we don't have an event that's Halloween specific. We don't have an April specific event. I mean, sure, there's Life Day. That's not really an event that's specific to Christmas. That's more of an event that's specific to the Star Wars The Old Republic universe. And I really like that about this MMO. It has events that are traditional to its universe rather than to the real world like World of Warcraft and such. But there we have it. That's enough of the introduction for now. I hope you guys sort of agree with my points. I'd like to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. But let's move on to improving current events, because I feel that's a huge part of Star Wars The Old Republic. And at the moment, the events are sort of just left once they bring them out. It stays there for a while, and they don't really add to it. I mean, that's not entirely true, because the Rakghoul Plague had some new additions. Like, for example, it was originally on Tatooine, but they moved it to Corellia for a little bit, and it bounced around here and there. But I like the fact that they sort of try to improve the event in general, rather than just leave it how it was. So keeping to that same sort of mindset that the events can be improved, I'd like to quickly go through all the events at the moment and then how they can be improved. To start off with, I want to focus in more so on the Rakghoul event specifically. Now, to start off with, I want to cover the reputation rewards. As you guys know, we receive various armor sets and pets and various rewards for completing the Rakghoul event and earning legendary standing, but at the moment, the newcomer armor set is the exact same as the champion armor set, except for it's a different color, and that is because the armor sets were added before dyes came out, and now that the dyes have come out, you can sort of just replicate the champion armor set with the newcomer armor set, and I really don't like that. I think what they should consider doing now is going back and maybe adding a new legendary armor set that you can obtain, so those of the people who have earned the legendary reputation get another reward instead of the same old newcomer reward. That's just a little change I feel that needs to sort of be considered by the devs. Anyway, moving on from the first point, the second point I want to make is the ideal that they could have harder zones in the Rakghoul event in general. At the moment you have 3 sections. You have the base location where the Republic and Imperial players are located. Then you have the tunnels where it's a whole bunch of medium level mobs. And then beyond that you have the heroic zone. But the heroic zone at the moment is kind of easy. You can run in there with yourself and a companion, or just 2 players, and kill all the heroic bosses on your own. And it's not really that much of a challenge. I think they should either consider making that area harder, or making a new area, maybe above the surface, covered in Rakghoul Plague infection, similar to how we had on the original Tatooine launch, where you had the crashed ship and there was like a little above surface area. Just somewhere that's a little bit harder for more, well, less casual players, if that makes more sense. And as a final point, I just want to cover the idea of them adding ambushes in the caves. When you're running around the caves in the Rakghoul event, it is very easy to just go through the entire thing on your mount and not really have much of a struggle there. I think they should have actual ambushes, or areas where you go and it triggers an event. Sure, that would be incredibly annoying for some players who have done the event thousands of times, but for new players it stops them from just flying through it on their mount, and it encourages more combat in the caves, and it makes them feel like more of a threat or more of a dangerous area like the Rakghoul event place is actually supposed to be. So it brings it to life a bit more, and that's why I kind of want them to add ambushes rather than just squads of mobs everywhere. It just throws the entire thing out and makes it less intimidating than it actually should be. But there we have it. There's a few improvements that can be made to the Rakghoul Plague. I don't think that will be very costly on the dev team. They're not going to have to spend huge amounts of money to make these small improvements. But if they did, it would definitely improve the Rakghoul event as it stands at the moment. And that's something that I feel they should strive to do. Moving on now to our next event on the list, I'm going to be talking about the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association, which is a quest that of course takes place in the Republic and Imperial fleets. For those of you who don't know, you get this quest outside the Cartel Bazaar by clicking on a person frozen in carbonite. Once you then get that quest, you go upstairs to the Cartel Bazaar, speak to a droid, and then you get a selection of planets to go through, including Dromacast Coruscant, Alderaan, and a few others. Once you get the quest, you can then go to the chosen planet, and you get given a quest line that incorporates killing a wanted criminal or another bounty hunter. And that's the basic gist of it. Now, there are a lot of potential improvements that could be made to the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association, which I could cover, but I only want to focus on sort of 3. To start off with, I'd like to just quickly go over the idea of them adding a quest hub to it. At the moment, you go to the Cartel Bazaar and either Republic and Imperial fleets, and I don't really like that too much. I'd rather them have a clubhouse for the bounty hunters, whether it's something to do with a hunt, or if you go to somewhere like Trandoshia, and you have just a central hub that you can go to, and it makes the event sort of feel a little bit more interactive. It's not so much about being on the fleet. It just gives it its own zone, you know? The Rakghoul event has its own zone, and everyone loves that. The Gree event has its own zone at the back of Ilum, and people really like that. If you added a zone to the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association's event, it would definitely improve the event in general. Which brings us to our next point, which is a narrative arc. I really think that they should add a narrative arc or some form of storyline to the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association. At the moment, if you compare it to other events like the Rakghoul Plague, there was that whole situation about a ship crashing on Tatooine, which originally started the outbreak, and then Thrawn had to come along, put a spire in the ground, and then try and battle off the plague. The Bounty Hunters Brokers Association doesn't really have that. It's sort of just a miscellaneous event that you can get, and I'd really prefer them to sort of think about it a bit more and maybe add something to do with the Great Hunt maybe. I know that's sort of covered in the Bounty Hunter storyline, but they could definitely focus in more on it for the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association event, or maybe something like a hunt or a big bounty that they have to stop, or they have to go kill someone, or try and protect themselves from Imperial or Republic officials. Something along those lines that makes it much more interactive and immerses the player a bit more. I feel that storyline is a great way of doing that, and of course Star Wars is all about storylines, so it makes sense for them to go out of their way to maybe consider adding something more to the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association. That's just my opinion anyway. So that's all I have to say on that for now, which brings us to our very final point, and that's the idea of them adding harder missions for the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association. At the moment, the entire endeavor is just sort of this casual event. You go to a planet, you interrogate some people, you get some information, and then you go kill a boss. It's not very difficult at all, really. I think that they should add a very difficult aspect to the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association, whether it's an operation boss, similar to how we have in the Rakghoul Plague event, with the huge eyeless boss. That's quite intimidating and scary and is very difficult to sort of beat. If we had the same thing maybe with a Mandalorian king, I don't know, a Mandalore coming along and claiming his right to the throne, and you have to fight him off or something like that, and, you know, preserve Shay's honor, whatever it is. I just think that they should definitely consider adding harder content to the Bounty Hunter Brokers Association. So that's enough of that. That's everything I want to say for the BHBA, which I probably should have been calling it the entire time, but oh well. Let's move on now to the Relics of Gree, and honestly, this event specifically is kind of my ideal event for Star Wars The Old Republic. I think it's the perfect depiction of what an event in Star Wars should be. It's got a great story arc, the daily grind isn't too bad, and the heroics are quite difficult, not to forget the operation, which is crazy on harder difficulties. So overall, the Relics of Gree is just an excellent, ideal event that should definitely be the role model for every other event in Star Wars The Old Republic. The only sort of comment I'd like to make is that they could perhaps advance the story a little bit further. Maybe they could have it where you go to the planet of the Gree, and I just feel that's the right way to go, because it improves the backstory of the Gree, it definitely improves the lore in general for the Star Wars The Old Republic universe, and it gives us more content to do with the event. At the moment, the event comes around very rarely, and of course a lot of us have done it so many times it's become a little bit boring now. So for them to maybe throw a twist to it, or maybe have us uncover more to the story of the Gree, that would definitely improve the event in general. Other than that, I think it's really good. Even the PvP aspect to the Gree event isn't too bad. It was better originally, I will admit, before they changed it back in, I think it was update 2.3 or something around that time. but before then it was a great PvP. It got a little bit worse, but it's still fine. Overall, the premise of the entire event is great, and I feel that that should definitely be the role model for all the future events to come. So that's all I really wanted to cover for the Gree event. Let's move on now to the very final event I'd like to list improvements for, and that is the Festival of Splendor. Now, I'm sure a lot of you don't actually know what this event is, because it comes around once every 6 months, and only veteran players would really understand. This is an event that takes place on Nar Shaddaa, and it incorporates a small quest chain. It's not very in-depth, and you go to the planet, basically. You go to a place called Club Redica on Nar Shaddaa, and once there, you can gamble to your heart's content. There's a whole bunch of slot machines, and it's not really that immersive. There's not enough content, really, for it to be an event, but it's not too bad. The only complaint I really have for it is, of course, that it is gambling, and you have to bear in mind there are 13-year-olds playing this game, and I don't think that should really be encouraged, but I don't really want to nit and pick at that right now. I'd rather focus in more so on the content, which honestly I do personally think is a little bit dull. There is not enough to do in this event, and they could seriously improve it by just covering some of SWTOR's basic lore and adding it to the event. For example, Berserk is a huge thing in this time period, and of course is even mentioned in the original trilogy, so it makes sense for them to bring it into the Star Wars The Old Republic era. I'd love to see perhaps an interactable Berserk game that you can play with multiple people, and you can put bets down and gamble with other players, and basically bring a competitive aspect to it. And that hasn't really been done in an MMO before, so I'd really like to see how that plays out, but I think that would be really damn cool, and it allows people to, sort of get into the smuggler ring a bit. You can take advantage of other players, and players can take advantage of you, and you can sort of just gamble a bit obsessively. It could become a big thing, but as long as they keep the credits low, I'd imagine it would be fine, and I'd love to see it actually in the Star Wars The Old Republic MMO. Anyway, there we have it. That's all I really wanted to cover for the existing events in the game. If you guys have any improvements you'd like to offer to the video, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below, and I will happily include the good ones in my influencer report, and maybe we'll be able to get a few of these good ideas into the game, which I think would be damn awesome. And very quickly, before we move on, I'd like to just sort of discuss whether or not they should add existing events that haven't been seen for a while back into the game. For example, there was an event called the Grand Acquisition Race, and I personally think that they should consider bringing it back as soon as possible, because we haven't seen that event in years, 2-3 years now, and it was such a good event. It encouraged players to fly and explore around the world as much as they could, to sort of go on a scavenger hunt, and it was a really good idea, so I think they should definitely bring that back. And on top of that, they should maybe consider bringing back the original Rakghoul event, where you had the ship crash on Tatooine, because as it stands at the moment, we just get the spires, and I think that original story arc, the narrative there, is definitely what captivated the story, so they should definitely consider going back and maybe bringing back those old events. Moving on now to the main part of this video, and that is new event ideas. I'm sure all of you are very aware that they have a whole list of ideas over at BioWare for new events, and they haven't really committed to any of them just yet. They've had a few concepts which they've immediately scratched and thrown away, and they focus just on the Knights of the Fallen Empire, Knights of the Eternal Throne, and then of course the War for Iokath plot. I think that there needs to be a new event sometime soon, and the question is, what should the new event be? Personally, I have a lot of ideas that I would like to see come to this game, and what I'll do to start off with is list my ideas, and then we'll move to the community ideas that you guys came up with on the forums. After a quick scroll through, I actually found a lot of really cool and compelling ideas that could definitely improve the game. But my very first idea anyway is the idea of an event that consists of the Republic and the Empire in some form of conquest. At the moment in the game, when you run around, you enjoy the Star Wars The Old Republic universe, especially while leveling. You see a little bit of conflict between the Republic and the Empire, but you never see any live or actual conflict on a massive scale. What I think they need to do is have some form of war break out in space between Republic and Imperial cruisers. These two ships during the event would be fighting each other, and the event would be about you either boarding the Republic or the Imperial trooper, depending on your side. And then following that, you could have the players running through the ship, destroying strategic objectives as part of the dailies. Then at the very end, have an operation boss of some sort, and in the operation, they could have some form of strategic war machine or something really cool like that as part of the Republic or the Empire side, and both sides are planning to use it against each other. I would like to see something along those lines. If not, they could maybe bring it down to the planets again, and then on the planets you could have somewhere like Voss or maybe Balmora, and seeing the Republic and Imperial troops fighting each other in huge open warfare, then doing daily events on those specific planets. Now, it does sound somewhat repetitive because we've just done a super weapon with Iokath, but if they were to make it specific or niche to either the Imperial or Republic side, I can imagine that being a little bit more interesting. And following that, I would feel it would be a great opportunity to maybe bring back the rail shooter original flying space battle system that they had in the game. I would like to see, maybe, I don't know about this, but a daily where the Republic or the Empire flew around an enemy vessel and blew up certain aspects of it, and it would just, relight the original rail shooter aspect that a lot of people liked. And I didn't really like how they changed it to Galactic Starfighter and then focused in on that for a bit. I would much rather we saw some more rail missions, or maybe they could execute it a little bit differently and make Galactic Starfighter PvE. I don't know exactly how they do it, but I'd love to see some form of actual open warfare between the Republic and the Empire as part of a daily quest line. Anyway, there we have it for a Republic versus Imperial event. I'm not sure what you guys think of that. Would love to know your ideas in the comment section down below, but honestly, that's all I want to say about it for now. Moving on to the next event idea, which is basically this concept around going to Droman Cast, or maybe Korriban, or perhaps Aethys, or one of the Sith-orientated planets, and then fighting some form of Sith Master or Ancient Sith. To elaborate on that, I would really like the devs to perhaps consider that as a possibility, because I think the Empire would be very interested in that at the moment. With the Empire being so weak, it would make sense for them to go and look for a new source of power, whether it's something at Aethys or a new Force knowledge that could perhaps tilt the war in their favor. It makes sense for them to research into it at least. So I'd love to see the Sith maybe looking into some original old Sith spawn of some description, whether it is someone like Rakghoul, because I can imagine that as an operation, and I can see that boss fight being just amazing. Fighting one of the strongest ancient Sith of all time in his spirit form, just that would be so cool. And I'm not sure what the chances of them are of doing that, but just they could really take advantage of this, especially with, you know, the Emperor Valkorion being deceased as of now. I'd imagine there would be some fluctuations in the Force. They could maybe do something with Anathema even. Just an event that is to do with a Sith spawn coming back and trying to devastate the world. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail with that idea, but I would love to see it. The return of an ancient Sith Lord as an event, it could happen every couple weeks, every month or something. Just a time period set to a Sith Lord waking up, his power unleashing, and the Republic and the Empire having to go and stop it before he becomes too powerful. So that is my idea for an event. Moving on from there, I think there could perhaps be an event around the Houses of Alderaan. So to put that into context, at the moment the Houses of Alderaan are quite possibly some of the most powerful characters in the galaxy, because every other faction or significant strength in the universe has been dwindled down by the Eternal Empire. But the Houses of Alderaan were left, not completely, but were more or less left to their own devices. So they still have a fair bit of power, or a significant amount of power, and if a war were to break out between all the houses, that would make a pretty damn cool event. An event specific to Alderaan, you go down there, and maybe all the houses are threatening to declare war on each other and eradicate each other, or maybe they're all threatening to side with the Empire or the Republic, and you have to go on a diplomatic mission every now and again to keep things calm. I think that would be a pretty cool event, and considering you're the Outlander, you need to try and keep the houses under control. You've got like that moral responsibility. I could say, you know, the Alliance is like America in that sense. They have to go and get into everyone else's business and try and control things and sort stuff out and make sure war doesn't break out. So that is something that I feel should be considered maybe as an option or a possibility, going to Alderaan to settle the houses down and make sure there's no war going on there. Because if there was a war with the Houses of Alderaan, it would be quite devastating, because they are one of the only few factions that haven't been completely decimated. So I would like to see some form of event around all the Houses of Alderaan going to war, or something along those lines. And very quickly, before we move on from the Houses of Alderaan, I would like to see a reputation system as well that's around this event. Maybe every time this event comes around, you can side with one of the different factions, whether it's Olgo, Thul, or one of the other many Houses of Alderaan, and you can side with them and then do their daily quests specific to them. Similarly to how you have the War for Iokath now, you can do the Republic or the Empire side, and as you notice, all the events are actually quite similar, and all the dailies are quite similar. So you could have something similar to that with the Houses of Alderaan. I don't know, I just think that would be really awesome, having all these different reputation rewards for all these different houses. It would just be so awesome, and then the decoration options as well would be endless. Just something I think is a great opportunity, and the devs should definitely optimize it while they can. Which brings us to my very last idea, which is a pod racing system. Now, everyone's been talking about a pod racing system, so it's not 100% original, but the way I want them to set it up I feel is quite unique to my idea. And that is the idea of having a Galactic Starfighter system for pod racing, and an event that's specific to something like Bunta's Eve, because that would be really damn cool if you had the Bunta's Eve event come around each year, and it's just a huge server, all-out fun event where everyone just goes pod racing. Now, they have said before in the past that the engine is limited, so they can't have all these instances of various pod races running around, going around a set track. Now, I can understand that completely, but if they were to use the Galactic Starfighter system, then have it where races could go around Tatooine or something like that, but they had maybe lower res textures, or they had it where only one person went around at a time and it was based off a leaderboard. I don't know, and I don't want them to push their engine to the limit, but I think they should explore the option, because pod racing or maybe even swoop racing are huge parts of the Star Wars The Old Republic universe, and they should definitely optimize it, or maybe have some form of event in the game that at least relates to it in some way. And I like the idea of maybe having a UI similar to Galactic Starfighter, as I said, where you can customize and add things to your vehicle. And yes, you can change its color. I know they don't like that because the Cartel market, they want to optimize the income they get from that so they can have different colored mounts under different packs. But what I'd much rather they did is made it so you could have a pod racer or a swoop racer and then cover it in your various color schemes or designs, maybe put different cockpits on or different engines, maybe have different speed boosts, things that, increase your 0 to 60, see it as racing kind of, and then have a leaderboard at the end, a chart where you can see who's the fastest on your server. So come on devs, let's make it happen. Let's end it there for all my ideas. I want to sort of talk about community ideas and how they can be created, because a lot of you guys have submitted a whole bunch of stuff to me from the last discussion video, and I did warn you guys that I would be doing an event one, so I did get a lot of stuff from the audience, and I've also been over to the forums and checked out ideas there from the community, and so far I've got a whole bunch of cool ones that I definitely think the devs should consider putting into the game. So let's start off with the very first one from the community. To start off with, we have an idea for a Mandalorian Clans event, specifically about Rishi and Darvanis. At the moment, we have a small instance on Darvanis where you can join up with Shae Vizsla as part of the Kotet storyline, and following that you can go around, destroy some certain sites, and there are a few things to do on the planet, but there's no official zone. So the idea that I was proposed was a daily zone originally, but it could also be converted into an event where maybe the Mandalorian clans fall apart and one of the clans starts up again and tries to rebel against Shae Vizsla. Vizsla doesn't allow that to happen, and you have to, as the Alliance commander, come and help Shae re-establish order amongst the Mandalorian clans, or an event like that, or maybe an event where the Mandalorian clans leave the Alliance and go and start attacking random Alliance planets, and they sort of start up the Great Hyperspace War again, or something along those lines, something ridiculous, where the Mandalorians try and conquer and take over the whole of the galaxy. Anyway, personally, I feel that has a lot of potential as an event, because the Mandalorian clans are a beloved aspect of the Star Wars: The Old Republic universe, and I don't think they cover it enough in SWTOR in comparison to how they did in Star Wars Galaxies. I'm sure a lot of us are actually kind of exhausted to hearing about Mandalorians, but if they were to do it in a specific way, or made a zone specific to the Mandalorian clans, I think that would definitely encourage a lot of hype, because, they have had a lot of time to re-establish themselves, and the Mandalorians could be quite a huge threat at the moment, and maybe they're more so in hiding on planets such as Rishi, and they're not really that obvious to us as the Alliance commander. So I'd like to think maybe there is a huge armada of Mandalorians hiding away in the galaxy somewhere. Something that cool would definitely be event-worthy from my perspective. Following that, I saw another event on the forums that I really like the sound of, and that's the idea of Zakuulian rebellions. As you guys know, Valkorion was killed by the Outlander, and I think that is a really good grounds to establish an event upon. Maybe the Zakuulians would get pissed off at the Outlander for taking over the Alliance, and then the Alliance taking over the Eternal Empire, and now the Alliance and the Eternal Empire ruling over Zakuul. I can imagine a lot of Zakuulians being very unsettled with that, and they start uprising against the Republic and the Empire and, of course, the Alliance, and try and just cause devastation, terrorist attacks, all of that. And I know that's already been done in the form of uprisings, but to see a consistent event on it, I think would be a great idea. Personally, I would like to see the devs go through with it, because the Zakuulians are a really interesting race, and I would like to hear a lot more about their backstory, maybe something on the Scions as well, because they have sort of been abandoned. I mean, we've seen them again at the War for Iokath, but their backstory is really vague, and I would like to hear more about them, to be honest. Which brings us to our very final event that I'd like to discuss from the community, and this was an idea that I feel tops most of the other ideas on this list, to be honest, and that is the idea of having Hutt raids. At the moment, the Hutts have been sort of in hiding for the last 5 years, because as you know, Kotef and Kotet has been a rather long struggle for the Republic, the Empire, and the Alliance, and there has been no monitoring of the Outer Rim. So what might have happened is the Hutts might have regained power, started taking over the whole of the Outer Rim. There could be a massive armada of warships. They could have used the Isotope 5 again that they had in stores and stores. They have so much of it now. It makes sense for them to optimize it and use it. And an event maybe where the Hutts come back and start attacking Republic, Empire, and Alliance-occupied worlds, I think would be pretty damn cool, and having to fight them off and maybe stop the Hutts from trying to take over the galaxy again. I know we saw a lot of it with the Makeb expansion, but overall I think the Hutts have a really interesting backstory as well, and a lot of people would find it quite interesting to engage in an event that's specific to the Hutts. So I'd like to see it. I don't know about you guys, but I'd like to see them come back with a whole army of various Huttonese mercenaries and such, trying to go around and conquer the galaxy. That's just my opinion anyway. I'd like to see it in the game. And there we have it, guys. That is my video today. I've gone over the current events in the game and how to improve them. I've discussed new event ideas and my own personal ideas, and then of course I've gone over to the forums and discussed community ideas that you guys have come up with, and I have put my favorites into this video. So honestly, I feel we've covered this topic quite in-depthly, and I would like to now continue this video in the comment section down below. So if you guys have any ideas for events, or anything you'd like me to include in an influencer report maybe, feel free to leave it in the comment section down below, and I will happily reply to you and discuss with you anything about the event system that you guys would like to see in the game, and we'll see what we can do in terms of getting it actually produced and put down in front of us so we can all enjoy a new event of some description. So there we have it, guys. Thank you all for watching today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you all next time. Bye, guys.